Evelyn's pulse pounded in her ears as her gaze darted to the empty examination table. The puppy was gone. Jackson must have seen the shift in her expression because he stiffened, where a noise, soft, almost imperceptible, came from the far side of the room. A shadow moved beneath the counter. Evelyn swallowed, stepping forward slowly. The overhead fluorescent lights hummed, casting harsh lines against the sterile white walls. Her fingers trembled as she reached for the cabinet handle. Before she could touch it, the door creaked open an inch. 2 golden eyes stared up at her, wide and gleaming. The puppy had moved there in silence. A deep unease curled around her ribs. No normal puppy could do that. Slip away soundlessly, without so much as a rustle. And those eyes, there was an intelligence in them, sharp and unwavering. Evelyn crouched, speaking softly. "Come here, little one." For a moment, the puppy didn't move. Then, slowly it stepped forward. As it emerged from the shadows, its fur seemed to shift in the light, the silver strands rippling unnaturally. Evelyn reached out, but the second her fingers grazed its back, a jolt shot through her arm, a static-like sting that made her flinch. The puppy tensed, ears flattening. Jackson cursed under his breath. "Okay, that's officially weird." Before Evelyn could respond, the front door rattled. A sharp knock. Then another. She and Jackson exchanged a glance. The clinic was closed, and no one should have been out in this storm. Evelyn stood, pressing a hand against her chest to slow her racing heart. Through the frosted glass, she could make out dark figures standing just beyond the entrance. The knock came again, harder this time. "Dr. Carter?" A voice, deep and level, carried through the door. "We need to speak with you." Evelyn's fingers curled against the counter. The way of the phone call, the blood results, the eerie warning all pressed against her at once. Every instinct told her not to answer. Jackson took a step closer to her. "They know," he whispered. "Somehow they know." The puppy let out a low, warbling noise, almost like a growl, but something was off about it, like it was mimicking the sound rather than producing it naturally. The knocking ceased. Silence. Then the door handle twisted. Evelyn reacted on instinct. She grabbed the puppy, cradling its too warm body against her chest, and jerked her head toward the back. "We need to go. Now." Jackson didn't hesitate. He pushed open the rear exit, rain blowing into the doorway as they slipped into the alley. Evelyn barely had time to register the cold before she heard the front door burst open behind them. A voice barked orders. Heavy footsteps pounded against the tile floor of her clinic. They ran. Jackson's truck was parked 2 blocks away, but the streets were slick with rain, the storm swallowing their footsteps. Evelyn's breath came fast, her grip on the puppy tightening as she ducked into the shadows between 2 buildings. "This is insane," Jackson muttered, wiping water from his face. "Who the hell are those guys?" Evelyn shook her head. "I don't know, but we can't let them take this puppy." She looked down. The small body in her arms was still. Not limp, not lifeless, just still, as if it was conserving energy, waiting. She had never seen an animal behave like this. They reached Jackson's truck. He yanked open the door, and Evelyn climbed in, pulling the puppy close as he started the engine. The tires screeched against the wet pavement as they sped away. Jackson checked the rearview mirror. Black SUV, 2 cars back. Evelyn turned, her stomach twisting. The headlights cut through the rain, unwavering in their pursuit. Whoever these people were, they weren't giving up. She forced herself to think. "We need somewhere safe." Jackson clenched his jaw. "I have a cabin, deep in the woods, off the grid." She nodded. "Go." The highway stretched before them, dark and empty, swallowed by trees on either side. The SUV followed at a steady distance, never closing in, never falling back. Watching, Evelyn turned her attention to the puppy. Its breathing was steady now, its body no longer trembling. She placed her palm against its fur, feeling the heat radiating from it, unnatural warmth, like an ember barely contained beneath its skin. She pulled her phone from her pocket, her fingers slick with rain. She hesitated before opening her messages. One unsent text lingered on the screen, the blood results. She pressed send. Within seconds, Her phone vibrated. A message from an unknown number. Don't let them take it. They don't want to help. Asterisk, asterisk. Her stomach flipped. The rain eased as they turned onto a narrow, unmarked road. Tree branches clawing the truck sides as Jackson maneuvered through the winding path. After several minutes, the headlights behind them disappeared. The SUV hadn't followed. Jackson exhaled. Either we lost them or they let us go. Evelyn didn't like either option. The cabin was small and unassuming, half hidden beneath towering pines. They hurried inside, locking the door behind them. Jackson grabbed a towel, tossing it to her. You okay? She nodded, drying off before carefully setting the puppy on the floor. It stood on shaky legs, sniffing the wooden planks. Evelyn knelt beside it, heart still hammering. What are you? The puppy looked up at her, and for a moment, she could have sworn something flickered behind its eyes. A recognition, a knowing. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Then the power cut out. A low, guttural growl reverberated through the clinic as the power cut out, plunging the room into darkness. Dr. Evelyn Carter tightened her grip around the small, trembling puppy, her breath coming in shallow bursts. Across from her, Noah stood frozen, the tranquilizer gun in his shaking hands, aimed toward the shattered doorway. The storm outside raged on, lightning flickering like a strobe light against the clinic's sterile white walls. But the true storm had already arrived. The silhouette at the entrance was massive, crouched yet towering, its outline unmistakably inhuman. The clinic security lights flickered back to life for a brief moment, illuminating what had once been merely a shadow. What they saw made Evelyn's stomach lurch. The creature stood nearly 7 feet tall, its body a strange fusion of human and canine. Thick, dark fur covered its arms and torso, tapering down to clawed hands that flexed as though testing the air. Its face, though wolf-like, held an intelligence that sent a shiver down her spine. Eyes that mirrored the puppy's, luminous, golden, almost sorrowful, locked onto her. Noah exhaled sharply, adjusting his grip on the tranquilizer gun. Evelyn, he whispered, say the word. The creature's gaze flickered to him before settling back on the puppy in her arms. It stepped forward, slow, deliberate. The floor creaked under its weight. The puppy let out a soft whimper and squirmed, not in fear but recognition. Evelyn felt her pulse hammer in her ears. Every instinct screamed to run, but logic held her still. This wasn't a mindless predator. It hadn't attacked. If it had wanted to, it could have already torn them apart. You came for him, she said, forcing her voice to remain steady. It wasn't a question. The creature exhaled sharply through its nose, nostrils flaring. Then, to her absolute shock, it lowered its massive body, sinking to one knee. Its head dipped in what could only be described as submission. The puppy whimpered again, ears twitching. Noah's grip on the tranquilizer loosened. What the hell? The creature made a sound, a deep, resonant rumble, almost like speech, but layered with growls and clicks. It gestured to the puppy, then pointed to itself. The meaning was unmistakable. It's his, Evelyn murmured. She met the creature's eyes again and, for the first time, saw something she hadn't expected. Desperation. Noah let out a slow breath. This whole time, we thought it was hunting us, but it was trying to get its kid back. The realization struck Evelyn hard. The puppy hadn't been abandoned. It had been taken, separated from its kind, and left in a world that didn't understand it. And they, Evelyn and Noah, were now standing between a parent and its child. But then a chilling thought crept in. If this creature had been looking for the pup, then who had taken it in the first place? As if in answer, a car engine roared outside. Headlights cut through the darkness, casting elongated shadows across the clinic's walls. A second later, the front door was kicked open, and 2 men in dark tactical gear stormed in, weapons raised. Step away from the specimen, one of them ordered, his voice sharp and cold. Evelyn instinctively clutched the puppy closer. The creature let out a thunderous snarl, rising to its full height, but it didn't charge. It knew a fight here would end badly. The second man pulled out a small device and pressed a button. The lights overhead flickered violently. An ear-splitting frequency filled the air. The creature howled in agony, clutching its head as its legs buckled beneath it. The puppy yelped, writhing in Evelyn's arms. Noah moved first. Without hesitation, he raised a tranquilizer gun and fired. The dart struck the first man in the neck. He staggered back, cursing, before his legs gave out beneath him. The second man pivoted, but before he could react, the creature, despite its pain, lunged. Clawed hands closed around the man's wrist, twisting the device from his grip. It shattered against the floor, and the piercing noise ceased. Panting, Evelyn met the creature's eyes again. This time, there was no hesitation. She stepped forward and gently placed the puppy at its feet. The small creature nuzzled against its massive counterpart, letting out a sound that was more relief than fear. The creature bent its head, touching its nose to the puppy's forehead in what could only be described as a silent promise. Then, with a final glance at Evelyn, one that held gratitude, sorrow, and something ancient, it turned and vanished into the night, carrying its child away from the world that had tried to steal it. The rain swallowed them whole. Noah let out a slow, disbelieving laugh. Did we just let a werewolf escape with its kid? Evelyn exhaled, feeling the weight of everything settle on her chest. Not a werewolf, she murmured. Something older, something we were never meant to find. They stood in silence. The unconscious intruder slumped on the floor between them. The storm had passed, but the echoes of what had just happened lingered. There would be questions. There would be cover-ups. But one thing was certain. What they had witnessed tonight would never leave them. Days later, Evelyn found something at her doorstep. A small, intricately carved pendant, warm to the touch despite the morning chill. She turned it over in her hands. On one side, a symbol of a paw. On the other, a human hand. A silent acknowledgement. A truce. Somewhere in the vast, untamed wilderness, a child had returned home. The rain fell in thick sheets, hammering the cracked pavement and turning the empty streets into shallow rivers. Jackson Moore pulled his jacket tighter around his shoulders, cursing the weather as he stepped out of the gas station. His shift had run late. Again. He exhaled, watching his breath mix with the cold air before turning to lock up. Then he heard it. A sound, barely there beneath the wind and rain. A whimper. He froze, listening. The sound came again, weak and desperate. He turned toward the alley behind the gas station, his boots splashing through rainwater. The dim glow of a street lamp barely reached the narrow passage, casting the world in shades of gold and shadow. His eyes landed on a small, crumpled cardboard box wedged between the dumpster and the brick wall. Kneeling, Jackson hesitated before peeling back the soaked flaps. Inside, curled in a trembling ball, was a tiny puppy. Its fur was matted and streaked with mud, its small frame barely moving. Water pooled at the bottom of the box, chilling the animal further. He reached in carefully, feeling the frail weight of it against his palms. The moment his hands made contact, the puppy tensed. Its golden eyes flickered open, briefly, and for a moment Jackson swore they reflected light in a way he'd never seen before. Then its head slumped against his wrist, exhausted. He was about to tuck the puppy into his jacket when he noticed a scrap of paper clinging to the inside of the box, ink smudged from rain, but still partially legible. He peeled it free, squinting at the shaky handwriting. Not what it seems. Be careful, asterisk, asterisk. His stomach tightened. He glanced down at the tiny creature in his hands. There was nothing outwardly dangerous about it, just a scared, abandoned puppy. But something about the note, the way it had been hidden here in the storm, unsettled him, shaking off the feeling. He hurried to his truck, setting the puppy gently on the passenger seat. It didn't move. Its breathing was shallow, and when he turned the key in the ignition, the glow of the dashboard lights cast eerie shadows over its too thin frame. The only vet clinic open this late was across town. He pressed his foot to the gas, the windshield wipers struggling against the relentless rain. As he drove, he risked another glance at his silent passenger. The puppy twitched in its sleep, a tremor running through its small body. Then, for the briefest moment, its lips pulled back slightly, exposing tiny sharp teeth. Not unusual for a puppy. And yet, something about the way it moved, stiff, unnatural, made the unease in Jackson's stomach twist tighter. Dr. Evelyn Carter was cleaning up after a long shift when the door chime rang. She turned, surprised anyone would be out in this storm. A man rushed in, a dripping cardboard box in his arms. "You take emergencies?" he asked, breathless. She wiped her hands on a towel. "Depends on what you've got." Jackson set the box on the counter. Found outside. Someone dumped it. Evelyn pulled on a pair of gloves and lifted the puppy from the box. It was colder than it should have been, its body unnaturally still. She pressed her stethoscope against its tiny chest. The heartbeat was weak but steady. The fur, however, gave her pause. Thick for such a small creature, with an unusual silver sheen that caught the light. She reached for a towel, moving to dry it off, but the second the fabric touched the pup's back, it let out a low, guttural noise. Not quite a whimper, not quite a growl. The sound made Jackson take an involuntary step back. "That's not a normal puppy's sound," he muttered. Evelyn carefully examined its mouth. Its gums were an odd shade of gray. Its teeth sharper than expected. She moved to check its temperature, then froze when her fingers brushed its skin. Heat pulsed beneath its fur, unnatural and intense. She grabbed a thermometer, pressing it under the pup's leg. The reading blinked back at her. 109 degrees. Jackson whistled low. That thing should be dead. Evelyn's mind raced. She had never seen an animal with a body temperature that high survive. Her fingers trembled slightly as she grabbed a syringe. "I need a blood sample." The puppy twitched. Its golden eyes flickered open again, locking onto her in a way that made her pause. It was brief, just a second. But the intensity of it, the almost knowing way it looked at her, left her breath short. She shook it off and inserted the needle. The second the syringe pierced its skin, the puppy made a sound that sent ice through her veins. It wasn't a yelp. It wasn't a bark. It was deep, primal, almost wrong. The lights flickered. Then the noise stopped. The puppy slumped against the table, its chest rising and falling in exhausted tremors. Jackson exhaled, his fingers curled into fists. What the hell was that? Evelyn couldn't answer. She forced herself to move, retreating to the back of the clinic where her blood analyzer sat. She worked quickly, loading the sample, watching the screen flicker to life. The results processed, the numbers running through their cycle. Then her stomach dropped. That wasn't possible. She ran the test again. Same results. Jackson's voice broke through her thoughts. "Something wrong." Evelyn swallowed. "I don't know what this is." She grabbed her phone, snapping a picture of the results. She needed a second opinion. Before she could send it to anyone, her phone vibrated. Unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. "Dr. Carter." A voice, low and urgent, came through. "Listen carefully. You have something that doesn't belong to you." She went still. Her gaze flicked back to the exam table. The puppy was no longer there.